on the talking point. The Democratic Alliance in Gauteng has said the party has no desire to be part of a coalition government, at least in the city of Johannesburg. The DA was in partnership with other parties, you'll recall, after the 2016 local government elections, when no party won an outright majority in the city. Well, that agreement collapsed after Herman Mashaba resigned from the DA. Joining us now to talk to us about the party's campaign trail so far is the party's leader in the Gauteng province, Xoli Mngambi, who's going to talk to us not just about Johannesburg, but other municipalities that the Democratic Alliance has an interest in. Mr. Msimanga, I want to start with this talk or suggestion that John Steenhuisen has had to relocate to come to Gauteng because there is panic. Firstly, is there panic in the DA camp around whether or not you're going to retain cities like Tshwane, for example?
No. Remember, we have had Bruma, we have had our Nkuloko House as our head office for the longest of time in 2019. In fact, beginning 2016, we have had that as our headquarters. So there's nothing wrong and nothing strange about John Steenhuisen coming to these offices from time to time. Today he's not even in the province, so he's centralized in Gauteng, but he's moving around. And it's easier for him to then do that. So I don't know where this thing of him now panicking and being in Gauteng comes from. That's absolutely not true.
All right. Well, let's perhaps find out then from the party itself what your internal polls are telling you, particularly in Gauteng, as to whether or not you're going to win the city of Tshwane outright, perhaps. What happens in Johannesburg? Well, Midval, you seem to have a stranglehold there. I wonder what that could be attributed to. Some say it's got to do with your clean governance record there. But tell us about what your internal polls are saying.
Well, I can tell you, clearly, without any shadow of doubt, that we're doing better than the other party, the other governing party in the three metros at this point in time. That's what our polls are telling us. We are doing better in Mogale. We are doing way better in Midval. In two of the metros, we're not past, no, actually in three, we're not past the 50+1, but we're working on that. We are more on the ground, as you would have seen, this past weekend, and in the previous week, we are on the ground more than any other political party, big or small. We are doing our work on the ground, and we're trying to get to that 50+1. So the work is actually being done, and we want to push as hard as we possibly can, to not need any other political party to govern, because coalition governments, as much as they are the future of politics, but they are very difficult. So you want to then win an outright 50+1 so that you're able to implement in full, your manifesto without having to, beg and really rely on support from other people.
I'm going to pick up on what you have just said about coalition governments perhaps being something of the future. I want to start off, though, with the city of Tshwane, where the Democratic Alliance has been rocked by a number of scandals there, whether you talk about the 2.25 million of unauthorized expenditure. In fact, it's billion. I'm actually reducing it. It's billion. Unauthorized expenditure. This is from the AG. Hammanskraal, the residents there. You have water tankers running all over the show. That's not a good image. The issue of the sex scandal of your previous mayor with his MMC, these are just some of the issues that have surrounded the DA governance of Tshwane. Why are you confident that you're going to win an outright majority there?
Well, Xoli, is one thing to then own up certain things and to then say we've learned from our mistakes and then do things a whole lot better. And our track record shows that. That where we have erred, we've actually owned up, and we have been transparent in saying this is what has happened, and we move on. But let's just clarify a few things. You mentioned the issue of the 2.5 billion.
2.25.
2.25 billion. By the way, that is something that has been accumulating over the years. So it's not something that started when the DA came into office. Let's just get that clear. In fact, if you look at the amount of wasteful expenditure since we took over, had actually reduced. And it started escalating again when Lebogang Maile did put his administrators in office. We are now sitting...
So within the 8 months, these 8 months have been such a big talking point. What is it exactly that they did?
Let me tell you what they did. So, first of all, they passed a budget that was not... what is the right word? So they passed a budget that they didn't know where they were going to get the money from. So that's number one. Number two, they went and committed funds to projects that now they were not going to be able to then pay for. There's issues that we're still going to investigate relating to PPE. You know, it was during that time of the PPE scandals. So Tshwane was not, without its own share in there. So like in Johannesburg, we are now investigating what happened with the PPE. We've had checks that had been built by the national minister, which have now cost more than what a house would have cost in the city of Tshwane, amongst other municipalities, even if you go to Polokwane as an example, when we were, trying to relocate people. So there's quite a lot that has happened. So we had, by the time that the administrators took over the city had a cash balance that was over 2 billion. Now they had reversed that and actually had passed a budget that, was not even funded. And that is something that the AGs always said no to, because you need to have a budget that is funded so that you're able to then implement your projects having money in the kitty. So this time they did that, they didn't even have money. And then now they committed the city, and the city has to, again, go back to a negative balance, including money that they have gone and borrowed that they didn't know how they were going to pay. Luckily, we've been able to pay that money back.
We've digressed, from the point or the question I asked, and it has to do with, why do you think the people of Tshwane are going to trust you with all these scandals that were mentioned, with their vote, and to such an extent that you win that city outright? What are the key selling attributes?
So you started with the issue of Hammanskraal as one of the boiling points, right? And so, there was issues of water in Hammanskraal. We went to Hammanskraal. In fact, I was in Hammanskraal. You can go onto my social media. I was in Hammanskraal on Thursday. We went there, and even before, when I went with Premier Makura to clarify the issue of water in Hammanskraal, we finished the purification plant in Hammanskraal, which has started working. And it was vandalized because, again, the tankers, once that is functioning 100%, then it means that, the tankers will be out of business. It was vandalized. We fixed it again. We put security around it. What is now the step that is to follow is to fix what is now, upstream, which is Rayval. Rayval, with water coming from Uppies and the surrounding areas into Rayval, gets cleaned and purified, and then it goes down to the Temba, Temba side, where it then gets to be purified and then distributed to the communities. We then went out. We went on tender. In 2017, I still have the letters. We went out on tender. Nomvula Mkonyana stopped that contract. Stop that contract. And that's a fact. They stopped that contract because they knew if we got it right, it was going to be closed on 3.5 billion rand as a 10 key, which we were going to fix Rayval, going from Rayval to Temba, then getting people water. Meaning also, rehabilitating the surrounding areas where Rayval has now found itself, because there's a lot of farms in there that have now been polluted. We were having a 10 key to fix that. They stopped that. While National Treasury said you can go for it, while there were bidders that were already shortlisted. And I told the people of Hammanskraal, and this is why I'm saying we are able to then own up to the mistakes, but we are also able to be transparent enough to tell people this is where we are finding, a difficult time in giving you what is duly yours. But we didn't stop there, Xoli. What we did is we then went into the Soshanguve site. From Soshanguve to New Easteres, and then into the other parts of Hammanskraal. What we did there is then we laid pipes that were coming on the other side from the Soshanguve Block DD reservoir, which is now supplying certain parts of Hammanskraal West, as it's called. with clean water, unlike what they have been experiencing from previous times. That, if you were asking me, that is a good story. If you go to the community of Reference, people that have never had tap water have now tap water in their yards. That is the story of the DA.
Very briefly then, before we take a break, your experience of running coalition governments since 2016. The record has been disastrous in trying to run coherent councils. I'd like to know from you what your strategy is going forward. You've alluded to this point that these coalitions are something of the future. And so what is going to be your strategy in running at least these councils that they cohere, as opposed to the disaster that we've seen in Tshwane?
Look, I think there's quite a lot of lessons that we have learned as the DA. One is that you cannot have a as and when I'm happy kind of coalition agreement. It needs to be in principle, in writing. There needs to be contract in terms of what we agreed to, what we don't agree to, what needs to happen when we find ourselves disagreeing. Now, these are some of the things that were not there in 2016. So we had a situation when somebody would vote with you when they're happy. Tomorrow, if they're not happy, then they decide, we're not voting with you.
You're talking about the EFF, right?
Yeah, well, that. So you need to get a situation where the agreement is in writing, and you're able to then hold people to account. And we've said very, very clearly, we will not go into any coalition with any other person who doesn't hold the same value as we do. And that is of clean government, that is of a non-racial service delivery to the people, that is also of ensuring that we have a capable state. If you're not able to agree to those principles, then we're not going to be able to then agree with you. Whether you're the EFF, whether you're the ANC, or whether any other party, if that is the principles that you cannot agree to, then we cannot form any kind of coalition with yourself.
Well, one of the elements you've mentioned is that of non-racialism that will characterize whether or not, or that will be a determinant of whether or not the DA goes into a coalition partnership with the various parties. Well, the DA's Phoenix posters, they seem to be a distraction on your election campaign. When we return, we pick up on that point. This is Politics Unscripted.
Views about some saying that you can't call those vigilantes allegedly who killed people heroes, as you are saying in those posters. Do you regret those
That's
posters?
not what the posters say at all. And quite frankly, the people are heroes. The people who are heroes in this are the South Africans who, when the government retreated and the SAPS retreated, stood up and defended the rule of law, defended the Constitution, and defended their lives and livelihoods. Those are heroes. People who stood up against the lawlessness. And I will call them heroes, and I will continue to call them heroes, because they didn't retreat in the face of danger. They didn't hide away like the SAPS and Bekele's people when things got real. They stepped up and stepped to it. The President himself called them heroes in his own newsletter, and I concur fully with that. Anybody who stood up for the rule of law, for the Constitution, which are founding principles of our party, I will continue to call heroes.
We continue the conversation with the DA leader in Gauteng, Xoli Mngambi. Mr. Msimanga, let's pick up on those comments by John Steenhuisen, the leader of the Democratic Alliance. The party has had some time to ponder this issue. Have you come up with a coherent message that is going to try and put an end to what continues to be bad PR around your campaign?
Well, let me just say from the onset, that was a very unfortunate poster, and we have said this. The poster was not even sanctioned by the party. It was not agreed for. As a provincial leader in Gauteng, if anything needs to come, I need to sign off on it. The national leadership, as we sit, needs to sign off on these things. And this was one of those things that was never signed off. And this is why steps are being taken to make sure that whoever has actually done this will face, the consequences, and it will be done internally. I don't want to go into, who it was and, what, authority did they use, or, what didn't they use. All I can tell you is that this was a very, very unfortunate poster. That shouldn't even have gone out, because it actually doesn't stand for what we stand for as the Democratic Alliance, number one. Number two, is actually very far from the message that, we have been putting out there. You've seen our message. Our message is of getting things done. Our message is of a positive nature in government, and this is not talking to that.
Mr. Msimanga, you are saying that this matter is being dealt with internally.
Yeah.
If you look at today's papers, your chief whip in Parliament, Natasha Mazzone, she is quoted in papers, and this is a matter that is playing out on social media platforms among your leaders. She is threatening legal action against a fellow party leader in Limpopo, a Johan Aubrey, who is intent on saying that perhaps these posters, there was nothing wrong with them, whereas Natasha Mazzone has described them as, quote-unquote, incredibly in bad taste. It's playing out in public. It's become a divisive issue, is it not?
Clearly, let's correct one thing.
Okay.
Johan Aubrey is not a leader of the DA. Doesn't sit on any leadership structure, whether locally, provincially, or nationally. Doesn't.
Is he a party?
Yeah, I'm not too sure whether he's a party member. I know that he's voted for the Democratic Alliance, but I'm not sure whether he is a party member. But what I can tell you is that he doesn't sit on any leadership structures of the organization. That's number one. Number two, there is a stance that we have taken that those posters were wrong. They were taken down immediately. There was an apology that has been issued. Now, I'm not too sure what is the story that is playing out. I haven't read that part, I must confess.
Okay.
But I can tell you right now is that the party has taken a stance to then say we need to stick to our message, and that is of ensuring that we're able to tell the good story of what the DA has been able to do in government and what it has actually promised to do in government going forward. And this is the message that we bring into the people of different municipalities across the country.
These election posters, have they become a distraction for the Democratic Alliance campaign?
Well, in certain areas, they were used against us, and this is something that we're owning up to. And we're going into those communities to not only apologize, but to then reiterate our message, message of a non-racial, non-divisive South Africa that we are intent on building and that we are building. A capable state that we want to make sure that is able to render services to the people, that is able to get the economy going, that is able to give the people of different municipalities a dignified life. Yeah. That's what we are putting out there, and this has been our message from day one, and this is what we are sticking to.
Some political commentators hold the view that these posters, what they've done is to put in the public space what is a mirror of the soul of the Democratic Alliance. Do you agree with that conversation?
No, I don't agree with that
observation, to say these posters perhaps talk to the DNA of the DA?
I don't agree with that. If that was the case, I wouldn't even be a member of the DA. Kana Makashule wouldn't be a member of the DA. Zwakele Mngango wouldn't be a member of the DA. Bongikos wouldn't be a member of the DA. And I can go on, and count so many people that, if the DA was a racist organization that had actually no intention of building an inclusive society, would have been belonging in the organization. But here's the thing. What I find very problematic is that it looks like the issue of race is only reserved for the Democratic Alliance. When these things do happen or being said somewhere else, and I'm not excusing it.
Well, you sparked this one yourself.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I'm not excusing it, but I'm saying it looks like it is actually reserved for the DA. When the EFF went out and said, Indians are racist in this particular area, nobody picked up a fight. When the ANC went and did the same, nobody picked up a fight. The DA says it. It's all on the DA. Is that because other political parties have got nothing else to offer the people of South Africa, or to fight the DA on that to use race as the only thing that they would want to use?
Can I tell you what the problem is?
Yeah.
Perhaps the problem is that the DA tried to gain political favor by using race in a community that suffered a particular prejudice, or a particular race suffered in that community as a result of what occurred in July. And so what you did is effectively what is called race baiting.
But Xoli, I did say to you, this was never the message of the Democratic Alliance. This was never a sanctioned poster or message from the Democratic Alliance. Yeah. And this is why, after the meeting of the executive committee of the party, we've decided that those things needed to come down immediately, and we needed to take corrective action in terms of dealing with the people or the person that have actually then put those up. That was not the message of the DA. Mm. Our message is being very clear and being very consistent. We have been talking about the work that we do and what we want to do. That's what we've been talking to.
Can I ask the question?
Yes.
Your leader's handling of this matter, John Steenhuisen, has he provided the necessary leadership, you think?
Well, we've met with the leader, and we were asking the leader to then, tell us what he knew or what he didn't know at that point in time. And it became very, very clear that John was not informed, was not given all the details going into an interview that, by the way, I was standing next to. And unfortunately...
How could he have defended these so fervently?
No. John was not defending the poster. John was defending...
On that point?
Yes.
On that point?
Yeah.
He was not defending the poster?
Yes.
Let's just have a listen quickly.
Okay.
And you tell me if that's not defending the posters.
No, I'm not going to apologize, because I was on the ground. I saw exactly what was going on.
So were we, Mr. Steenhuisen, and which is exactly why, we saw what we saw, Mr. Steenhuisen, is a divided community along racial lines. And it was Francois Rogers, your KZN leader, who said the ANC is being opportunistic by using race. Why does the DA hate dealing with race when race is something that's fundamental to our society?
We're confronting the racism. We're confronting the racism by calling out the stereotyping that was done by the ANC and its leadership in Phoenix. All they've done...
So there are no racial undertones with what happened in Phoenix. Let's be very specific here.
I'm saying to you that it is wrong. There were absolutely racial incidents in Phoenix. Absolutely. But you don't take a paintbrush and then paint the entire community of Phoenix as bloodthirsty, racist Indians, as the ANC have done. There were heroic people in that community who stood up and protected the elderly. They protected young children. They protected businesses in the face of a government that completely lost control of the situation, because they cannot even get the basics like policing right, just as they can't get the basics of water right here in Gauteng. I didn't say that people who killed loved ones here. Do not put words in my mouth. I said quite fundamentally that those people who upheld the rule of law and respected justice and protected their communities lawfully during the time are heroes. Anyone who broke the law is no hero of mine. I'm a firm believer in the rule of law, in constitutionalism, and standing up for the right thing to do.
Is that not a defense of the posters?
No. One of the things that was cut out of that interview is where he says, even in Gauteng, in Soweto, he made an example of the heroes in Soweto, the ones who were protecting Maponya Mall, the ones who were protecting the mall in Deep Kloof.
You're talking about the posters.
No. That's why I'm saying the issue of the poster, that's a non-negotiable. So that's a non-negotiable. The posters were wrong.
Okay. And his defense of the posters?
He's not defending the poster. He is defending the people that stood for the economy, that stood for the livelihoods and the lives of the people that were being threatened. And this is what he said.
By calling those who perpetrated the murders of the majority black people in that community heroes?
No. Let's not put things out of context here.
Okay.
He says there are people that stood in Gauteng, and he made mention specifically of what happened in Soweto. Unfortunately, that got cut out. He makes mention of what happened in Phoenix, yes. But we decided to then stick to what happened to the Phoenix story. And then, it became an issue of the poster. And I'm saying the poster was wrong. It was not sanctioned by the party. It shouldn't have even gone up.
And we've moved on. I agree with you.
Yes.
You have acknowledged that these were wrong. I'm simply asking about John Steenhuisen's handling of this matter as a leader of the Democratic Alliance and the messaging that goes with that.
What was defended is the people, or what was praised and what was defended is calling people who stood up for what was right as heroes. That was what was defended. And he mentioned, as I said, not only the people of KZN, not only the people of Phoenix. He mentioned the people of Gauteng, Soweto, more specifically, and what happened in different areas in Soweto. And then Samkelo actually then says, but we're not talking about what happened in Soweto. We're talking about what happened in KZN, relating or trying to bring it back to the posters. He reiterated again to say, even President, call these people who were able to defend the infrastructure, who were able to then protect the economy as heroes. He said specifically those words. And this is why I'm saying it should not be an issue about the posters. The posters were wrong, and this is what we've apologized for, and we've owned up to that and say this is something that shouldn't even have happened.
Do you think, though, that that apology should not come from John Steenhuisen himself, so that this matter possibly can be put to bed, because it continues to surround your campaign?
Yeah, but clearly this is not something that was, if John was to come up and apologize, he should be apologizing for something that he would have sanctioned or he would have signed off for. And this is why I was saying to you, or I'm saying to you, there are internal processes that we are now able to then deal with the culprits to make sure that they face, the internal might of the DLO.
Okay, so I wonder if these posters, therefore, have sparked what some are already referring to as a succession race, or at least debate, inside the Democratic Alliance. But we're going to talk about that in a moment. The segment of the show, it's the talking point, and we are in conversation with Xoli Mngambi. He is the leader of the Democratic Alliance in the Gauteng province. And we are in the middle of a discussion here, Mr. Msimanga, about these Phoenix election posters that sparked outrage, frankly, around the country. And the talk now seems to suggest that the posters have sparked what looks like a succession battle inside the Democratic Alliance. Why am I saying this? Mike Waters has resigned from the DA election campaign, citing a spineless leadership. You have Natasha Mazone, who is fighting with a fellow member of the Democratic Alliance. You beg to differ whether or not this person is a member. Nonetheless, there are reports this morning that Ellen Windy is being punted as someone who could possibly replace John Steenhuisen, given what is going on, and should perhaps John Steenhuisen not lead the party to a decisive victory after the November 1 elections. Have these posters sparked something of an election battle inside the DA?
Not at all. These talks have been there forever and ever, and these are people who would try to pit one leader against the other or try to promote one to elevate them. I've been told, or there are people who've been saying to John and whoever cares to listen, that Xoli Mngambi, has been asked to stand. I'm not even interested for that position. But these are talks that have been there for months and months and for years. Even when Musi was there, it's in the nature of politics that these will be talks that will be there every time, there seems to be an issue that might be coming up. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the internal processes then are not, put in place to make sure that there's internal discipline, number one, but number two, that all members are actually then adhering to the rules to get to the point where you go through elections and internally or externally you go through elections properly without bringing the party into disrepute.
You talk about internal discipline. Mike Waters has resigned, and I chose the words carefully from his letter to say there seems to be a spineless leadership in the Democratic Alliance around these posters. Should he be booted out of the Democratic Alliance? Are there moves to discipline him? Because this is completely out of order.
Well, I don't know whether resigning is out of order. Being a liberal party that believes in individual rights and freedoms.
No. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
What did he resign from? My understanding is that he's resigned from the election campaign.
Yes.
But he has not resigned as a Democratic Alliance member.
Let me tell you what he says his reasons are. So he says that the party is now, folding, or it's folding over due to pressure, and that is coming from, external forces, as he calls it. Now, he believes that, we could have explained the poster or whatever the case may be and then moved on, which we then felt at a national level that is not something that we were going to do. But that doesn't give us then the right to then kick him out, because he has a right to then internally, which
having
he did.
used such strong language, such as that this leadership is spineless.
Internally, he has. Look, we're not a demagogue of an organization where people cannot be approached or people cannot be told that I don't think that you're leading us in the right direction. You can have people that would say, I don't think that you're leading us in the right direction. But if I'm able to convince the majority of the people that this is where we're going, that's what about democratic leadership is all about. You are always going to get people that don't agree with you. I'm sure there are people in the EFF that don't agree with Julius Malema. There are people that don't agree with Cyril Ramaphosa in the ANC. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you then have to deny them internal opportunity to then express themselves when they're feeling that there is something, that they need to then say to the party. Unfortunately, something that was supposed to have ended internally ended up then in the media space. That letter was sent internally to the internal structures to be dealt with the internal structures, but it ended up being in the public space.
All right. We're fast running out of time. If the Democratic Alliance does not fare well post-November 1, should John Steenhuisen suffer the same consequences that Msimanga suffered post the 2019 election?
Well, that will be something that I think that the Federal Council will have to then pronounce on. Musi didn't suffer a fate that didn't go through processes of the Federal Council, the Federal Executive, and a decision that he took, by the way. So he then sanctioned and called for a committee that looked at what happened. The Federal Council agreed to having a committee put together to look at what has happened and how we then move forward. And then that's why we got to a conclusion. This is why even the report that they suggested a few things be done went to Federal Council, and from Federal Council suggested to FedEx what needed to happen. So there are processes that will need to be followed if indeed something were to happen after the elections. It's not something like Xoli is going to stand up or Alan Wind is going to stand up and say the leader must go. There are processes that need to be followed.
Sure.
So those processes will need to be followed, irrespective. And we do always do a postmortem of the elections. And when we do postmortems of the elections and we found that there are certain things that needed to be done that were not done by Xoli Mngambi as the leader in Gauteng, Xoli must then face the music.
Yeah.
If I'm supposed to have done certain things that I didn't do, and it does go through the processes, then one will have to then answer as a leader to then say, what did you do or what didn't you do? So that's what it is.
So if it happens that John Steenhuisen falls, do you think the Democratic Alliance still has it in its, lost for words for now, but perhaps I could borrow from Tony Leon and say, do you think the Democratic Alliance might once again try and experiment with another black leader?
Well, that was another unfortunate statement. What is an experiment? You put a leader because the leader will put a vision to you, and then we follow that leader. We follow the vision of that leader. John Steenhuisen put his vision forward. People voted for him. Mbali put her vision forward. People voted for her. She didn't get the majority, but people voted for her. So what will happen? Should it be that John decides to step down, or should John get to the elections, the internal elections, the coming internal elections, and contest or be contested by somebody? Then the next person who will win will then be the leader. Not an experiment, will be the leader based on how they would have campaigned and what they would have sold to the internal electorate of the Democratic Alliance.
You've said that you are not interested in that position. Why not?
No, I think there's still a lot that I need to do in Gauteng, and I'm still sitting in the federal executive at a national level, so I'm able to contribute. But I don't think that I'm at the stage where I would then want to be the ultimate leader of the organization, not at this point in time. There's a lot that I still want to do. There's a 2024 campaign that I have in mind for the Democratic Alliance here in Gauteng, and this is what we're going to be focusing for, or at least myself and the people that we're working around here in Gauteng. We want to be focusing in Gauteng and make sure that the majority of one that the other party is enjoying is actually something that they would not have come 2024.
Xoli Mngambi, thank you very much for your time. DA leader in the Gauteng province, you've heard it. He's not keen to take over from John Steenhuisen, should John Steenhuisen fall. That has been the talking point here on Politics Unscripted.